The invisible oven, you feel it the moment you step into your living room on a late July afternoon. The thermostat says 76 degrees, so everything should feel comfortable. But the wall behind your couch tells a different story. It is warm under your hand. Your shoulder brushes the drywall near the window, and it feels like a heating pad someone forgot to turn off. That is not your imagination. That is your wall radiating heat straight back into the room, the same way a cast-iron pan keeps throwing off heat long after it leaves the stove. In many American homes built after 1955, the outside surface of a sun-facing wall can climb toward 160 degrees Fahrenheit under hard summer sun. And even after sunset, that heat keeps moving inward for hours. So when your air conditioner runs late into the evening, it is not only fighting the outdoor temperature, it is fighting the heat stored inside your own walls. But the Amish understood this problem more than 200 years ago, and they addressed it with a simple mineral material that could come from a cheap bag of powder, not an expensive machine. The genius of that old method is not just folklore. It shows up in energy studies, in old building records, and in farmhouses that still feel cooler than many modern homes. The first time I walked into an Amish farmhouse outside Millersburg, Ohio, on one of the hottest days of August, I did what any builder would do. I put my hand flat against the inside wall. I expected warmth. Instead, I felt cool plaster. The room was around 75 degrees, no central air, no window unit, no fan pushing hot air around. Just a solid, breathable wall doing its job quietly. This is the kind of knowledge we recover here on Survival Roots. Practical building wisdom that was once common, then slowly pushed aside by modern products that cost more, fail faster, and keep homeowners dependent. Today, I am going to walk you through the old Amish mixture used in the early 1800s, why materials like this disappeared from mainstream construction by the late 20th century, and the forgotten trick from Lancaster County that helped these coatings last for decades. You will not need to tear down your walls. You will not need a complicated remodel. And one of the ingredients that helps this old method survive weather, moisture, and time may already be sitting in your refrigerator. Are you ready to take back control of your home? Let's begin. Section 1. The modern heat trap. Why your walls are cooking you. To understand the fix, we first have to understand the failure. Why does a house that looks perfectly normal start behaving like an oven the moment summer heat settles in? A big part of the answer is hidden inside the wall itself. The standard wall system in most modern homes was shaped more by the lumber and construction industries than by people thinking carefully about how a family actually lives through a brutal summer. 2x4 framing, fiberglass bats stuffed between the studs, exterior siding, interior drywall. It all looks efficient on paper. But under heavy sun, that wall can become a heat sponge. Here is the part most homeowners are never told. Fiberglass insulation can lose a large part of its rated performance when the temperature inside the wall cavity rises above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And on a south-facing wall in summer, that cavity can easily climb toward 130 degrees by mid-afternoon. Studies from the University of Wisconsin Forest Products Laboratory have pointed to this kind of thermal drift. In plain language, the insulation weakens right when your home needs it most. Then the problem compounds. In 1946, Willis Carrier, the same name tied to modern air conditioning, predicted that American houses would eventually become sealed, climate-controlled boxes. And that is exactly where the industry went. By 1986, many homes had moved from breathing naturally many times per hour to exchanging air less than once an hour. We wrapped houses in vinyl siding. We added polyethylene vapor barriers. We covered walls in synthetic acrylic latex paint. On the surface, it looked modern and clean. But in practice, we built a plastic bag around the home. Those layers trap heat. They trap moisture. They slow drying. A wall that once worked with the weather was replaced by a wall that holds the weather inside. And that is the real question. Why did we abandon wall systems that could dry, breathe, and regulate heat naturally, only to replace them with walls that store heat and make our air conditioners work harder every evening? Section 2. The 1842 Thermodynamics and Evaporative Cooling Now compare that modern sealed wall to an Amish stone and plaster home built in 1842 near Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Those farmhouses often had exterior walls around 18 inches thick. That was not waste. That was practical building wisdom. The Amish may not have used today's technical language, but they understood two powerful ideas through experience: thermal mass and evaporative cooling. Thick stone could slow heat movement. Lime plaster could help the surface reflect sun, release moisture, and stay cooler through the day. The outer surface of those old farmhouses was commonly finished with lime plaster, made from hydrated lime, coarse sand, and a natural binder such as horsehair or straw. This was not decoration. It was a passive cooling system built directly into the wall. Traditional lime plaster works in three important ways. First, a bright white mineral finish reflects a large portion of solar radiation back into the sky, often in the range of 80% to 90%. Second, lime is breathable or vapor permeable. It can absorb humidity during cooler periods and release moisture slowly when the day heats up. As that moisture evaporates, it cools the wall surface in the same basic way sweat cools your skin. Third, lime cures through a process called carbonation. As it hardens, it absorbs carbon dioxide from the air and gradually turns back toward limestone, pulling a small amount of heat from the surface during the process. This is why old lime-coated buildings can feel so different from modern painted walls. They are not just blocking heat. They are managing heat and moisture together. A Penn State University energy audit compared 31 Amish farmhouses in Lancaster County with 31 similarly sized modern English homes in the same climate zone. The results were striking. The Amish homes used 40% to 60% less heating energy in winter and stayed about 12 degrees cooler in summer without mechanical cooling. That kind of result should have changed the way we build. Yet outside a small circle of researchers and old school builders, almost nobody talks about it. Section 3. The Great Erasure, the $200 billion paint industry. So if lime plaster and Limewash worked this well, why did they disappear from ordinary home building? To answer that, we have to look at the direction the building industry chose in the late 20th century. In 1991, the National Association of Home Builders issued revised technical guidance for residential exterior finishes. After that shift, lime-based plasters and Limewashes were no longer treated as standard recommended materials for new construction. The official reason sounded practical: application time, skilled labor, and modern job site efficiency. And yes, lime takes knowledge. It takes patience. It does not behave like a quick roll-on coating from a hardware store shelf. But the deeper reason is hard to ignore. Natural materials that last too long are bad for repeat sales. A proper lime plaster can last for generations with very little maintenance. Vinyl siding, by comparison, often has a service life of about 20 to 30 years. That means a homeowner may pay for replacement more than once, often at a cost of thousands of dollars each time. Modern acrylic exterior paint can cost serious money per gallon, yet it often blisters, peels, traps moisture, and sends people back to the store every few years. The global paint and coatings business is worth well over $200 billion a year. Natural lime does not fit neatly into that model. You cannot patent basic calcium hydroxide mixed with water. You cannot easily turn a simple mineral wash into a proprietary luxury product that homeowners must keep buying over and over. So the old material was not defeated because it stopped working. It was pushed aside because it was slow, humble, inexpensive, and too durable for a market built on replacement. Even the language around it changed. Whitewash became something people looked down on, captured in the old saying, "Too proud to whitewash and too poor to paint." And within just a couple of generations, a building method with thousands of years of proof nearly vanished from the shelves. Section 4. The 1819 ledger recipe, what they actually used. But the Amish never followed the memo from the modern building industry. They were not waiting for corporate catalogs to tell them what a good wall should be. They simply kept using the materials that had already proven themselves through heat, rain, winter, and time. While tracing this old method back to its roots, I came across a leather-bound ledger from a stonemason named Jonas Stoltzfus, born in 1819 near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Inside that record was a preserved exterior plaster recipe that was simple, practical, and built around materials any working builder could understand. 3 parts coarse river sand, 1 part hydrated lime putty that had been slaked for at least 90 days, and just enough water to bring the mix to the texture of soft butter. He applied it in 2 coats over stone. The first coat was roughened with a stiff brush so the next layer could bite into it. The second coat was floated smooth and finished with a damp sponge. Nothing about it was complicated, but every step had a purpose. It was not fast construction. It was durable construction. The material cost written in that ledger was $18 per square yard. Adjusted for today's money, that comes to roughly $4.10 per square yard. For a typical 1,100 square foot home, the raw material cost could stay under $700 to cover the whole exterior, with a mineral skin that can last longer than many modern siding systems. And the science behind it is not guesswork. NASA confirmed the same basic principle back in 1959 while testing high-albedo, lime-based coatings on early satellite housings to control solar heat gain in orbit. The reflectance values they measured lined up remarkably well with what Amish builders had already observed in their farm fields for more than a century. The physics is real, the material is cheap, and the old builders understood the value long before modern construction remembered the lesson. Section 5. The $5 fix for existing homes, limewashing your walls and roofs. Now, you may be thinking, that sounds useful for old stone farmhouses or new construction, but what about the house I already own? That is where this method becomes especially valuable. You do not have to tear off your siding. You do not have to rebuild the wall. In many cases, you do not need a contractor at all. The Amish used a simpler version for existing buildings by thinning lime plaster into what is known as Limewash. Limewash is hydrated lime mixed with water until it reaches the consistency of skim milk. You can buy a 50-pound bag of hydrated lime, often labeled Type S lime or Mason's lime, at places like Home Depot, Lowe's, or Tractor Supply. Depending on your area, that bag may cost around $5 to $12. In the summer of 2022, I tested this on the south-facing wall of my own brick ranch house. I mixed a bag of Type S hydrated lime with collected rainwater. Then I used a trick taken from an 1890s Mennonite barn painting ledger from Sugar Creek, Ohio. I added a small handful of plain table salt for each gallon of mixture. The salt was not there by accident. It acts as a hygroscopic ingredient, meaning it helps hold moisture just long enough to slow the drying process. That gives the lime more time to move into the tiny pores of the brick, so it grips instead of flaking off the surface. I brushed on 3 thin coats with a wide masonry brush, working in an X pattern. Before the lime wash, at 3 p.m. in mid-July, that brick wall was reading 148 degrees Fahrenheit. After the Limewash cured, under the same sun and at the same time of day, the wall read 86 degrees. That is a 62-degree drop. And this is the important part. That is not insulation working after the heat gets inside. That is the wall refusing to absorb so much heat in the first place. The inside surface of my living room wall dropped from 91 degrees to 73 degrees. My July electric bill fell from $241 to $112, and this method is not limited to walls. A simple lime wash can also be applied to certain roof surfaces. Americans spend around $40 billion a year on air conditioning, and one of the biggest reasons is roof heat. A light mineral coating can reduce roof surface temperature by 50 to 60 degrees in less than an hour under strong sun. The Greeks used lime on the Parthenon. The Egyptians used it to seal temples thousands of years ago. Today, roofing companies may charge $2,000 to $5,000 to spray a proprietary cool roof polymer that is, in principle, trying to imitate what a cheap bag of lime can already do naturally. Section 6. The Secret Binder, the 1937 Usta discovery. But there is one question every practical homeowner should ask. How do you make it last? Modern paint companies often say lime wash washes away in rain and needs to be redone every year. That can happen when lime wash is made poorly or applied without the old knowledge. But traditional builders had a simple secret that made a major difference. During a visit to Lancaster County, I sat on the porch with a 70-year-old man named Amos. He told me his father, born in 1896, always added one ingredient to Limewash that I had almost never seen mentioned in modern instructions. He called it skim milk wash. That meant plain, fresh skim milk mixed into the Limewash at about 1 cup per gallon. At first, it sounded like folklore. Then I found a 1937 USDA survey in the National Archives covering Pennsylvania German farm building practices, and there it was. The science is straightforward. Milk contains casein protein. When casein is mixed with hydrated lime, it forms calcium caseinate, a natural binder that greatly improves adhesion and weather resistance. This is not some backyard myth. The same kind of compound was used in ancient Roman fresco work, which helps explain why paintings in places like Pompeii have survived for around 2,000 years. According to that 1937 USDA survey, farmers who added skim milk to their Limewash had exterior coatings that lasted 25 to 30 years without recoating. Plain lime and water, by comparison, lasted closer to 7 to 10 years. So the recipe is almost shockingly simple. A bag of lime, a gallon of skim milk, a handful of salt, clean water, and 1 Saturday morning of work. That is the kind of low-cost building knowledge that was never really lost by accident. It was simply pushed out of sight. Section 7. The Inside Secret, Breathing Walls and Health. There is one last part of this old building method, and this may be the most important one for your family's health. Cooling the outside wall with Limewash is only half of the story. When I spoke with a retired Amish builder named Eli Miller, a man who had helped build more than 200 homes, he said something that stopped me immediately. In a properly built Amish home, he told me, the inside face of every exterior wall is also finished with lime plaster. Not drywall covered in plastic paint, not a sealed modern coating, lime plaster. The reason is simple. Lime helps the room manage moisture. Interior lime plaster is naturally hygroscopic, meaning it can take in and release moisture as conditions change. In a humid summer, the wall quietly pulls excess moisture from the air. Then, as it slowly dries, that moisture movement helps cool the room. In a dry winter, the same wall can release moisture back into the space, reducing that harsh, dry feeling that causes cracked skin, static shocks, and uncomfortable indoor air. A study from the Fraunhofer Institute for Building Physics showed that rooms finished with lime can hold indoor relative humidity in a steady range of about 40% to 55% throughout the year without mechanical equipment. Drywall rooms, by comparison, can swing wildly, reaching high humidity in summer and dropping very low in winter. Fresh lime has another powerful advantage. It is highly alkaline with a pH around 12.4. Mold, mildew, algae, and many bacteria struggle to survive in that kind of environment. Before antibiotics, hospitals in the 1800s often whitewashed their wards every spring. Florence Nightingale supported this practice during the Crimean War in 1859, and hospital conditions improved dramatically. Even the cheese caves of Roquefort, France, used lime slurry to help protect aging rooms from toxic black mold while still allowing natural air movement. Today, the EPA estimates that many American homes have conditions inside wall cavities that support mold growth. That means the problem is not just heat. It is moisture trapped behind sealed materials, plastic barriers, and synthetic latex paint. When a wall cannot breathe, it can become a hidden mold chamber. By applying a thick lime paint over an existing interior wall surface, you can begin restoring some of that old ability to breathe, regulate humidity, and resist unwanted growth. In my own home, my wife noticed the change within 2 weeks. She did not talk about numbers or building science. She simply said the bedroom felt easier to breathe in. Conclusion: reclaiming our roots, you did not lose this knowledge by accident. It was taken away slowly, one modern product at a time. Architectural catalogs stopped listing the old materials. Builders were trained to install faster systems instead of longer-lasting ones. Manufacturers made steady profit every time synthetic siding cracked, acrylic paint peeled, moisture got trapped, and air conditioners worked harder through another brutal summer. The Amish did not lose this knowledge because they were never fully tied into the corporate system that replaced it. They kept doing what their grandfathers had done because it worked. They trusted walls that could breathe, materials that could last, and simple recipes that did not require expensive machines or patented formulas. Now you know the same basic formula. A bag of Type S hydrated lime, a gallon of skim milk, a handful of salt, clean water, and a wide brush. With that, you can create a mineral coating that helps lower surface temperatures, reduce cooling costs, and make your home less friendly to mold and trapped moisture. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can begin using a method that builders relied on for generations. That is what Survival Roots is about. It is not about chasing every new product on the shelf. It is about walking back decades of bad advice and recovering the practical knowledge that made homes cooler, healthier, cheaper to maintain, and more resilient. Now I want to hear from you. Which wall would you Limewash first? The south-facing wall that bakes all afternoon? The west wall that holds heat into the evening? Or would you go all in and start with the whole exterior? Share it in the comments, because I read them, and I want to know where your project begins. And if this kind of old, practical building knowledge is valuable to you, subscribe and ring the bell. Next week, I am taking you inside an Amish root cellar that keeps vegetables fresh until April with no electricity, using only sand and a buried clay pipe. You will be surprised how much useful knowledge has been quietly pushed out of sight. Stay cool, stay self-reliant, and I will see you in the next one.